Hello. Okay, so good morning again. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm sharing the same platform where just now we have listened the session covered by Professor Alberto. So this is really a great honor for me to share the same platform. So the topic is as Professor Alberto was talking about something related to the energy market in a distribution network, where there may be a situation, there are certain consumers, there may be the producers, or maybe a combination of producers and the consumers known as the prosumers. So there is an exchange of electricity with the utility grid. So the small section which we call it as that energy community, it is connected with the utility grid. So energy can be exchanged through this grid. Now this prosumer means they are producing their energy also. So it can be through the solar PV, and as the solar PV forecasting and all, it is ensured that it is not actually the which is reliable kind of an energy source. So you need energy storage associated with these. So we need accurate forecasting for this solar PV, as well as the load is also varying. So you need accurate forecasting of the load. So we can have some idea about the what is the requirement of that energy storage from that gap in the energy. So this needs some kind of an forecasting technique. So we'll start with understanding considering a particular community where there are several producers and consumers, that is the prosumers. Will take steps ahead with forecasting of the solar PV and the load, thereby determining the capacity of the energy storage. But the thing is that whenever we are considering that there will be some exchange of power, then there is a need of managing the energy, because the dependency on the utility grid you need to minimize as possible, because there is solar PV, you want to extract more out of it. So the dependency of the utility grid will be minimized if there must be some kind of a strategy which can be implemented with the wish of or the involvement of the customers. So that is demand response. So what is that? Means we have energy which is high, which is injected to the grid where the loads are connected, and your load is low with respect to that, then there is no issue. The issue will arise when the load is high and the energy which is coming from the sources is low, right? Even if you have a battery energy storage, but depending on its capacity, it cannot fulfill the whole demand. So you are asking the consumer to take part to solve this issue by reducing their load, right, without much affecting the satisfactory level. Okay. So if you reduce that load either by shifting the load from the off peak to the on peak to the off peak, or maybe curtail the load, okay, which is considered to be the that non-critical load. Okay, so you curtail those loads. So now why the customer will take part in this scenario? So we are giving some incentive. So if you are taking part, then I will give some incentive. So at the end of the month, your electricity bill will be reduced, right, because of that incentive. So if some scenario is there, then you can understand that there is always some exchange of data between the utility grid, and the consumer. So always the exchange of power is associated with the exchange of data. Then only these decisions can be taken. So whenever these data are exchanged, then always a threat related to that attack on that data is there. So how to deal with that situation? So more and more the system becomes smarter, more and more the data need to be exchanged. So there are certain protocols, there are certain procedures, there are certain interfacing units which allows us to exchange those data. But to prevent the security part of this exchange of data is of course one thing that you need to ensure before it is implemented. So our topic today is that impact of false data in the dynamic pricing of electrical energy on the distribution system power exchange. So this is the residential microgrid. So I believe there is one member amongst the participants. This slide is pretty familiar to that member. He is Dipanshu, because today I am going to present 99% of his PhD work, right? So this is a residential microgrid. So Dipanshu, you can correct me if I am wrong somewhere. So this is the end-to-end architecture of the residential microgrid with rooftop solar PV and battery energy storage system. So you see, this is a residential prosumers. So each of these houses are having a rooftop solar PV. So they are consuming, they are producing at the same time. Along with that, there is energy storage system, and this is connected with the utility grid. We are creating whenever the energy is being exchanged between this, so we are creating an energy market. So they are considered to be this service provider, and there are certain communication and where the data are being exchanged along with the actual power is exchanged between these two, right? So this is altogether can be considered as the end-to-end architecture of this residential microgrid to be considered for this particular presentation. Inside of each of these houses, we can consider that this is a home energy management system. So all the equipment in our house are can be considered as the smart equipment. You have smart TV, you have smart washing machine, smart fridge, and everything. So that means the data are there at your pocket with your mobile. So you can get all kinds of that energy, how much energy is being consumed. When you wish to switch it on or off or whatever, you can remotely can control it. So there is a smartness in each of the houses. Along with that, whatever the demand I can fulfill if my solar PV is working at its fullest. If not, then there is a support as that energy storage unit. And if those two are not sufficient, then of course we have the assistance of the grid. So that is how the typical on-grid rooftop solar PV system can be seen. Utility grid is connected with this house and this battery energy storage, and the consumption can be in terms of the AC load. So you need or maybe the DC load. So you need converters in between. So we have considered that all the loads may be DC. So we need only DC-DC converter, but because the utility grid is AC, so you need this DC-AC inverter in between. And net meter will allow you to understand that how much as a community we are basically taking from the grid. And if there is some excess energy, we can send it back to the grid. So the community can actually can make some profit if there is some excess energy. Communication technologies and protocols. So there are few examples which are known. Wireless means Bluetooth. You all know that Bluetooth is there, Zigbee is there, Wi-Fi is there. So we have certain issues with the Wi-Fi in this room only. WiMAX and cellular. These are all the examples of that wireless. And then word, there is that power line communication and Ethernet. So these two are the commonly used communication technologies, and their range and name of these networks. So either it could be a neighborhood area network or wide area network along with this home energy management system. So for small area and for the large area, we can choose depending on the range, depending on the data rate and the protocol with which it is being used. So we have that option of these communication technology. So this is a typical load demand curve, so which is showing that there is some valley period, there is some off peak period, and there is some peak period. So this is a peak period, this is off peak period, and this is a valley period, right? So we have the load which is varying in nature, but not necessarily the solar is varying with respect to this load. So the difference between this solar and this load profile will let you know that what is the difference in the energy, and that can decide the need of that energy storage. So okay, so there is some specification of the system of this rooftop solar PV. We can just skip this. Yeah, so we need to forecast the energy which is coming from the solar PV. So for that we have some data set for this time period 2012 to 2017, which is scaled down to that residential sector, and the data is divided into prosumers and consumers. So each of the houses are not prosumers. There are houses which are simply the consumer, and there are houses which are producing as well as consuming. So this is a 60-40 in nature, and this weather data set, it is containing these are the records of temperature, humidity, wind, and cloud cover that has been introduced as one of the feature in the data set. So hourly varying solar insolation is also used as the one of the input data set. Okay, fine. So we are having this temperature, humidity, wind, insolation, and load demand. So we are going to forecast the load demand. We are going to forecast the solar PV. The methodology which is used for the forecasting of the solar PV, which is having that depending on the cloud cover, where we can divide the day as a sunny day, cloudy day, or maybe the rainy day. So from the World Meteorological Organization, these are the certain nomenclatures being used, that whether you can consider this as a sunny day. If in terms of, if I say it in octas, or that is in terms of tenths, so if it is ranging from 0 to 2, or maybe in terms of tenth it is 0 to 2 to 3, then we'll call it as fine category, which is under this sunny day. Partly cloudy or cloudy can be considered as when these ranging from 3 to 6 for octas, or 3 to 5 for octas, and 4 to 6 for these tenths range. So this is cloudy. And rainy means we are having this portion where the values are pretty high. Tenths means it is reaching till 10, octas means it is reaching the ultimate value, which is 8. So our solar forecasting and the load forecasting all depends on, because you change the weather condition, your consumption will differ. Not only the solar power generation will differ, your consumption will also differ with respect to the that seasonal change. So sunny, cloudy, and rainy will be used for load forecasting, and of course for the solar insolation forecasting. So this is a typical forecasting actual and forecasting values is shown here. So we'll see that the actual value is this blue line, and this is the predicted or the forecasted value with this orange line. So this is more or less matching, but this is not the end. This is only the solar insolation. So I need to know that what is my power which is being generated from that solar PV. So we have one formula with the help of which we can find out that what is the power. We need to include the efficiency of the solar PV cell, the inverter, and the converter, and we are having that area required for each of the panel and this solar insolation forecasting. So we are getting this solar power which is actually being generated from this solar forecasting. We are using another index which is known as this clearness index. It is used to determine the clearness of the sky using solar insolation data, which is I divided by I naught. I naught is that extra terrestrial solar insolation, and I is the hourly global solar insolation. So what is the impact of this clearness index? So with the help of this clearness index, we have certain modification in it, that what is the cloud cover, and this clearness index is modified a bit, and your solar PV power is generated, which is much more realistic in nature with respect to the, if you use a normal clearness index. So this modified clearness index which has some more impact on the, in reality, that how much is the power which is being generated as far as the forecasting is considered. So forecasted load and the PV power generation for sunny, cloudy and rainy, we can see here. So there is a much difference. So this is the load profile, this is the load profile, this is also the load profile. So orange line is the load profile, and this blue line is the solar PV forecasting for one particular day. But this is for a sunny day, this is for a cloudy day, and this is for a rainy day. So our load profile changes, but look at this solar insolation or the solar power production. It is pretty low. It is pretty low with respect to the sunny or maybe the cloudy. So here comes the importance of that energy storage. It is further modified, that forecasting is further modified because you have a data set which may have certain outliers. Outliers means which are not desirable, or maybe the noises in the data. So you need to just get rid of those noises. So you can filter those data, and you use some AIML technique. Here it is used LSTM autoencoder, and ultimately we are getting that forecasted insolation. So what are the inputs? Hours of the day, temperature, humidity, wind speed, seasonality, and that actually the solar insolation historical data. Then it is filtered, and we are using this LSTM long short term memory, which is one type of deep learning method, and then autoencoder. So this hybrid model will ultimately give you this forecasted insolation. So the actual and forecasted are more or less matching, which is this solar PV as far as considered. This is my load demand, and this is my solar power. So this is the difference. This is the difference. So you see, somewhere the difference is positive, somewhere the difference is negative. The positive deficit means there is more demand than the generation. Okay, there is more demand than the generation. So this is a positive deficit, and the negative deficit means we have excess generation. We have excess generation, so we can store here some energy to our energy storage unit. Okay, so this is the background, right? So we have some community where there is exchange of power, there is exchange of data. So there are prosumers, there are consumers, they are maybe having a different way of their load profile. We can cluster it and can make some simplification of the energy community, and there is always an exchange with the utility grid. Even if there is battery energy storage, there is always some exchange with the utility grid. So now there are options of the attacker point of view, that I can attack this data which is being exchanged. Right. So whenever one community is taking part in the demand response, suppose. So demand response means what? That I will curtail my load. I can have that option of shifting the load, but here in this particular study, we have considered that we have curtailed my load. So the time period is already given in day ahead manner. So we will have this period of time, which is basically is the time period during which we are seeing that it's a peak period. So you curtail your load so that we can match the energy sources and the energy demand, right? So if somebody is taking part and curtailing its load, then that particular consumer will get some kind of an incentive. So it is also given that how much load you can curtail. You cannot make it is 0 and expect that I will get a maximum incentive. So there is a minimum and the maximum level of that reduction in the load. So that particular band, it is expected that all the consumers is coming within that band. So within that band means they are actually reducing that load and coming to this expected bandwidth. And whenever I am coming to the expected bandwidth means the operator will be happy. So whatever the energy is there and whatever the load is there, they are almost matching. And also at the same time, how much incentive I will give. So I will not lose my profit from the operating point of view, because by selling electricity I am making money. So if all the consumers are taking part in the and making that particular peak period as a zero load demand, so you need to give incentive with respect to each of these energy unit, and you are losing your profit. So there must be some limit up to which you are allowing your consumer, that up till which you can reduce your load, beyond which you can reduce your load, but you will not get incentive. With respect to that is the threshold value or your maximum incentive you will get, so that I can save my profitability margin. So the options are that where can the attacker be? Attack can be in the prosumer cluster end. So not all, maybe one particular data is attacked for the purpose of making more profit. So whenever I'm taking part in the demand response, so what the data is being changed, data is changed in such a fashion that I have reduced X times of load, but it is showing the data has changed and it is showing that I have reduced 2x times of load. So I am expecting more incentive out of it. And if it is not going beyond that threshold value of lower limit and the upper limit, then the operator will not understand that there is some problem. But of course, there are other ways. So the techniques that we are telling that there is always a chance of understanding that how much power imbalancing is there. There are meter, so which are sending you the data, which reads the data, but this data has been tampered. Okay, so that data has been tampered. So they are actually in that intention that I am reducing data, or I may not reduce data, but I will show that as if I am taking part in that demand response strategy. Thereby I will get some incentive. The other option is the attacker at the service provider end, in the utility end. Okay, so they are also making profit in such a way that it will show that even if I am not assisting you that much with that much power, but it is showing that I am assisting you with some more power. So you are demanding more power, so I am just tampering the data which is being exchanged from the utility end to the that consumer end. So you have that utility grid and the prosumers, where we divided these prosumers as some low consumption group and high consumption group. Okay, low consumption group from the point of view of that how much power it is being consumed. So we are dividing in these two parts, low consumption group and the high consumption group, and the total connected load. So this total connected load is divided in these two parts, low consumption group and the high consumption group. And we are having that how much is the demand response minimum percentage and the maximum percentage which need to be whenever they are active in this demand response participation. So this is the minimum and the maximum percentage of that energy that can be curtailed. And for the high consumption groups, it is a slightly higher side, because low consumption is already consuming that low energy. So the other nomenclatures is also shown here: the base incentive, the base penalty, then minimum energy reduction limit, maximum energy reduction limit, grid power, PV power, and the battery power. So of course there is battery power in between. So the two scenarios are clear to you. One is that attacker is at the prosumer end, and other one is that attacker is at the service provider end. So let me understand this IBDR program. It's that incentive based demand response. So we are giving some opportunity of the customer that you take part in the demand response and can make profit out of it. Okay, so you curtail your demand. So of course your energy consumption less means your the monthly bill will be reduced. But at the same time, if you are taking part during that period where I am wishing that you should take part in that, you will curtail in during this period. So I will give some incentive, right? So there are certain policies. Our corresponding to peak price is designated as A. So you consider that this is my day ahead price. Day ahead price is this orange one, and this blue one is the demand. The blue one is the demand, and this whenever the demand is modified because of that participation in the demand response, then these are the dots. These are the dots which is showing here. Now instead of being here, it is coming down here. So this is the period. This is the period. So we have a peak price designated as T. So this is the peak price, and then 2 hours before and after. 2 hours before and after is T minus 2 and T plus 2. So this is the period during which, because of the peak price, so I'm not willing to get energy from the utility grid, right? So I'll reduce my demand. So this is the time that I'm reducing my demand. Best incentive and the penalty are kept equal to the daily average electricity price. Yeah. So this the portions which are highlighted with this maroon color is the high consumption group, means C1, C2, C5 and C8. So all the prosumers, that community is divided into 8 clusters, out of which 4 are high and the high consumers, and the 4 are low consumers. So C3, C4, C6 and C7, they are low consumption group. So they are having that maximum demand and the total connected load that is given in this particular table. Okay. Okay, so what is the scenario A for IBDR policy? That this is my this particular range is basically the range of this demand response minimum and maximum. Okay, so how much reduction can be possible? So suppose one consumer is reduced a bit, but it is not going inside this. So how much should be the incentive or the penalty? That can be determined by this equation, where the new demand while taking part is in demand response is greater than the minimum of this DR. Okay, so this is the minimum and this is the maximum, that much reduction is allowed. One can go in between these two ranges and one can go beyond this also. So beyond this, if that reduction is there, there will be no more profit, because this is the threshold. The maximum reduction of your load can go till this line. Okay, and you are expecting at least you reduced to this line. So this is the minimum kind of a range that you are expecting that this particular consumer will take part, and this is the maximum limit that you are allowing it to reduce as far as that incentive is concerned. Okay, you will not get more incentive. The scenario B, as it is expected, that your demand is reduced and it is within this range, minimum and maximum range, right? So you will get incentive. You will get incentive. There is no case of penalty, because according to my wish, you are actually taking part in that demand response policy. And the scenario C, that it is going below that maximum threshold. Okay, so even if it is going below that maximum threshold, it is not allowed to get more incentive. It is determined with this maximum DR. Okay, so this is the predicted demand, and this is the maximum allowable demand reduction. Even if it is going below that, but it is being limited with this maximum limit, right? So these are the three scenarios that can be generated whenever this demand response, incentive based demand response policy is considered. Now every time wherever we have seen that there is incentive is determined, there is one particular coefficient rho is mentioned here. So how to determine that rho value, this multiplying factor value, right? So whatever is your day ahead electricity price, the x-axis is determined with this, starting with this DAP from that minimum value 2 or 3 times, 3.5 times, 3.75 times, 4 times, 5 times, like that. It is increasing, right? So means you are getting more and more profit. And at the same time, we are checking that it is the service provider revenue and that prosumer cluster benefit. So the benefit is increasing. As this multiplying factor is increasing, the benefit is increasing. Okay? Benefit is increasing. So it is shown for a cluster 5. So for example, this cluster 5, this multiplying factor is 3.75 is the maximum value of that rho multiplying factor is considered, because here if beyond that value the incentive is increased, then the benefit is more than the profit of the service provider. So this is not allowable. Okay? Till this point, the revenue generated by the service provider is more than the benefit of the consumer. Okay? After this point, the profit is more by the consumer and the benefit or the service provider revenue is less. So this is not allowable. This is not an actual market scenario. So you need to find out some threshold value. Which is basically the incentive. So that incentive is how much times of the day ahead electricity price. So whatever be the electricity price times 3.75 should be the allowable maximum incentive that can be given to the consumer. This is only just for example of this cluster 5. So there are certain results shown here, that low load profile for that high consumption group, these 4 groups, they are taking parts in this IBDR policy, and because of their reduction in the load, that how much is the different economic attributes, like that electricity bill without without demand response is something, and electricity bill with demand response, and of course you can see that every time it is reduced, which is expected. You are reducing your consumption, at the same time you are getting some kind of a benefit. So your electricity bill will be reduced. Then how much is the incentive? So service provider revenue is this much, and cluster prosumer cluster benefit is this much. So in the further slides, we will use this service provider revenue as SPR and the prosumer cluster benefit as PCB. So in the further slides, we will use this abbreviation. So far so good, there is no attack. Okay, as it is expected, it is working fine. For the low consumption group, in the similar fashion, the customers are pretty greedy, so they are reducing their load like anything beyond that threshold also, the maximum threshold, but you cannot expect more benefit out of it, right, because it is limited. But there are certain customers, they are basically maintaining within this range. Okay, so overall that electricity bill without demand response, with demand response, the incentives which has been decided, service provider revenue and the prosumer cluster benefit. So always you must see, you can check it, that this PCR must be less than this PCB must be less than this SPR. It must be the case, because service provider always should be under profit. Now, what are the security that we are expecting? Denial of service, unable to access. So, availability. Whenever you wish, you must have that data available to you. That's the operator is wishing, right? So, if somebody is making something, so you cannot access the data. Of course, there is something has happened. So, that security must be provided. Other one is this integrity, okay? This integrity. Sorry. And then this confidentiality. So, this confidentiality is, of course, is every time we are going to use, we have our certain password. Okay, so that confidentiality is ensured. So, there must be the way the attacker can think that how to attack this FDI, means this is basically false data injection. So, how to attack that flow of data, somewhere you are injecting some false data and thereby getting benefit out of it. Okay. So, it's indirect theft, you can say. It's not a direct theft, it is an indirect theft. So, vulnerability, where are these vulnerability are there? So, communication technology is the driving force behind smart grid operation. So, smart means what? If you say the smart grid, what are the features of a smart grid? You should not say that it should have a voltage control, it should have a frequency control. This is that normal utility grid is already having. So, what is the smartness? Smartness is that how much I am consuming, or maybe how much the other node is consuming. Every operator remotely sitting can able to access those data with time stamping, and at the same time can take necessary action whenever there is some kind of a disturbance is taken place, right? So, this data is which is flowing, making the system smart. So, that creates the vulnerability in the in that communication channel. And then advanced metering infrastructure are used for communication between consumer and the service provider. Attacks take place via communication channel, and that misleads the information flow between the market participants as far as this particular study is considered. Attacker has to be in the vicinity of the wireless network, of course, unless and otherwise it is in the vicinity, because it has a range. All these communication has a range. So, unless and until it is within that range, it cannot attack it. Yeah, so the scenario 1, if you can remember that the slide which was shown, that there could be a two possibility of the position of the attacker. So, the scenario 1 is that attacker is a part of any one prosumer cluster. Okay, attacker is there itself. Okay, in between there is some exchange with the utility grid in presence of the battery energy storage. So, this is the FDI attack scenario 1 is considered. So, malicious data which is injected by the adversary in some of the cluster during that IVDR event, because then only that incentive will take place, will actually playing the role. Okay, so how much more incentive I can get out of it, even if I am not taking part fully in the IVDR policy. Okay, so during that period only this malicious data has injected, and the overall load demand, including the false data, is also one thing that we need to take care. Yeah, what has happened? Attack scenario 1, what has happened? So, before that false data injection, our service provider revenue and the prosumer cluster benefit, it was something like this. Okay. Now, what has happened? That there is some reduction. Actually, this arrowhead should be for this first cluster, right? C1. Yeah, it is for the C1. So, that is why your presence is must. So, you see that the revenue has decreased and the benefit has increased. Okay, benefit has increased. So, this C1 is basically is tampering the data. So, they are injecting some false data, thereby the benefit has increased. Okay. So, actual data which is maybe reduced is something this, when it is taking part in the DR. And with that attack, it is showing that it is something this, right? So there is, because they are not getting incentive out of it, but the load has reduced. Load has reduced means, of course, the month end bill has reduced and the profit has decreased as far as the utility is considered. So that is how it is shown here, that ultimately that revenue has decreased and a particular cluster is benefited out of it, even if it is not reduced his load to this level. Only the data has tampered. But you always have that chance to take care. But now the attacker has a very tricky mind. What he is doing now, modify data scenario 1, what he is doing, he is not only reducing that falsified the data of his own, it is also take access of the other data of the other prosumers, right? So what is the data which is being increased or the energy which is consumed during that period of time, it is distributed among the others. Got it? It is distributed among the others. So I have reduced this much. So there may be a power imbalance which will be easily identified maybe by the operator because of that power imbalance, because actual power is not altering. It is only the data which is altering. So what it is doing, that we as a net meter is taking care of that, what is the total power consumption. So the net meter is checking that how much is the total power consumption. So that data is matching. So what he is doing, that I am not only reducing more, it is temporarily shown that I am reducing more, and what is the difference, actual and the attack difference is divided amongst the other clusters. Okay, because that attacker has that access of the other clusters also. It is not only attacking his own data path, it is attacking the others' data path also. So thereby, the more or less the revenue and the benefit are more or less being the same, and you may see that particularly this cluster is benefited, and every time this cluster, these three clusters benefit has decreased. Okay, so now it is a difficult situation. Now from the net meter data, from power balance data, you cannot able to understand. You cannot identify that which cluster has made this kind of a mischief. Now coming to that other scenario, the attacker is at the service provider end. So there what we need that malicious data which is injected by the adversary at again for the IBDR event, and overall load demand is also need to be noted. So for attack scenario 2, the load demand profile of this high consumption group and the low consumption group, all these are being attacked, and even if the reduction is this much, the attacker has, because it is service provider, it has distributed this in all of these clusters, and it is showing that they are taking part but not fully. They are taking part but not fully. So every time the benefit which is the case for each of the clusters, they must get that benefit. They are not getting it. They are not getting it. Even if they are taking part in the demand response, they are not getting the incentives because of this false data injection.
Now attacker is getting the benefit of that.
Attacker
is getting the benefit of that by
attacker is there in the service provider end. So in this case, the attacker is in the service provider end. That is the scenario 2. Earlier it was in the prosumers end. So in the load side, I am reducing, but I am showing that I am reducing more. So I am getting more benefit. Now here the load is actually reduced, but the service provider is attack his data and showing that that fellow has not reduced that much. So means I need to give less incentive.
His revenues increased.
Yeah, his revenues has increased. So every time after that false data injection, whether it is that high consumption group or the low consumption group, that benefit has decreased and the revenue of the service provider is increased because the attacker is in the service provider end. Now we need to identify that there is some malicious data which is injected. So how we can identify? So for each prosumer cluster, the net load at each time instant, it is monitored. Net load is monitored. Okay, and in addition, that you need to monitor that what is the revenue and the benefit as far as the service provider and the prosumer clusters are considered, and their relationship is observed, okay, during this IBDR event. Next, that as because the meters are always associated with some kind of an error, even if you can expect that this is the energy which is flowing, but always there is a chance that the meter itself has its own error, so you need to take care of it. So always that may not be the case, that what the data I am getting and what is the actual energy which is being consumed, there is a difference, so there is always an attack. So there is always a chance that because of that meter reading which reads a falsified data because of its own error, so that also need to be taken care. So it can be shown in these 4 steps that how the scenarios can be considered as the normal scenario or an attack scenario. First, there are input parameters which is indicated that what is the you are monitoring the load demand of each cluster at time t. So that net load monitoring is there. After that, you are monitoring the cumulative service provider revenue and the prosumer cluster benefit, which is basically the revenue and benefit monitoring. And then you are monitoring the smart meter error band, which is plus minus 2.5% we can consider. This is the smart meter monitoring, and then you are leveling whether the target variable is a normal or attack. Okay. So these are the steps. These are the steps through which ultimately you are taking care of this label data, right? So these three parts before identifying that whether it is a normal or attack is from your domain knowledge. So whether there is a need of artificial intelligence or machine learning, after this, even if your data is not labeled as normal or attack, or it is not understandable, then there is a need, because beyond this there is no domain knowledge. You only can monitor the power, you only can monitor the flow of the money or the revenue or the benefit, you only can monitor, at least can take care of the error associated with the meters. You don't have any other options, right? So your domain knowledge is limited by these 3 different blocks. After that, even if your domain knowledge is not enough to identify this as a normal or the attack scenario, then there is something is needed. So what the steps that you are taken care. Okay, so this is a cumulative SPR and PCF for 2 random days from the data set it is showing here. So this is the DR event for a revenue and benefit for 2 random days. So this for a particular day, this for a particular day. So you can see that this particular period of time is that demand response IBDR has been taken place, and here for this particular day, here that IBDR is being identified. Okay. Yeah, so we have that option that we have identified something. because through some methodology we have identified something. So what are the chances that, what is the accuracy of identifying this level data? The accuracy is basically, or the classification can be depending on these confusion matrix, that it may be a true positive, it may be a false positive, it may be a false negative, and it could be a true negative. So these are, you can see through this that it is actually being shown here as green. So this is true positive and true negative. So we are identifying that whether it is an attack or it is not an attack. So how much is this percentage? And then some data are being labeled as that it is an attack, but it is not an attack, and it is a normal scenario, but it is an attack. Okay, so that will ultimately define you that what is the accuracy of your methodology. Okay, so with this confusion matrix you can able to understand. So how many is your how many samples you are having, then your true positive plus true negative is the sum of this divided by this total samples out of this box will give you that accuracy. So how much you are truly identifying that this is an attack and this is a normal scenario. So the methodology, we are using some weighted voting hybrid ensembling machine learning classifier, where we are having decision tree, we are having k nearest neighbor, we are having support vector machine and naive Bayes and random forest. So these are the different that machine learning techniques that being used, and they are weighted, then weighted voting has been taken, and then ultimately it is raising alarm that it is an attack or it is ignoring it, considering this is normal. Okay. So there are certain parameters which is written here that related to each of these model, the parameters are mentioned here. And how these weightage are being determined? So the individual models are assigned with weights as sum of initial weights and the change in weights. So the change in weights is basically this TPR, right? TPR we already have defined here. True positive rate, it is the true positive divided by false negative plus true positive. And summation of true positive divided by this C is the total number of classified model. So that is how these weights are being determined, and given to the weight of each of these classifier, their voting has been taken place, and it is ultimately labeled as attack or normal. So that is how the methodology is there. So it is trying to identify the attack scenario, and we are getting some results, and it is showing that this bold scenario, that NB, the naive Bayes, is showing better for this attack scenario 1, but random forest is basically giving you this for the attack scenario 1. So for attack scenario 2 naive Bayes, attack scenario 1 it is random forest. But how the operator, whoever is operating this particular methodology for identifying the attack, how he will know that attacker is where, right? We have created these cases, and we have trying to identify that which is the attack scenario and what is the basically the normal scenario. So we are using many models of that machine learning, many models, and basically we are not concentrating on each of these models separately, right? We are combining this and getting that attack scenario, whether it is that truly or accurately can identify the classification of this attack scenario or the normal scenario or not. So it is showing that that default weights and these proposed weighted voting condition, all the accuracy ultimately has it is increased. Okay, and average accuracy is basically more or less the same. Average accuracy is more or less the same, but individually individually that attack scenario 1 with the default weights and the proposed weights, it has increased a bit. So 0.968 to 0.974 and 0.804 to 0.896. So you are basically combining many machine learning techniques and giving some weights, and then ultimately you are voting it and then getting some result, which of course is taken the pros and cons of each of these things, and then if you are combining the pros together, so obviously will be benefited. Your results will be ultimately get some better result. Okay, so attack scenario 1, undetected instances decreases from 3.2% to 2.6%. So still there are undetected cases. Still there are undetected cases. And attack scenario 2 is showing that undetected instances decreases from 19.6% to 10.4%. So that's a good jump. That's a good jump. But as far as this attack scenario 1 is considered, 3.2 to 2.6, there is a decrease in that undetected cases. Okay, so this was the last slide, and as I told you that I sincerely thanks Dipanshu Naure. It is his work, so I'm trying to present his work. So I believe that I was correct in each of the every slides, or if you wish to add something, you can add, of course, and if you have any questions, you can ask me. Thank you. No question?
Sir, how
Yeah.
we can scale down that you have represented in the second slide?
Yeah, so the data set is scaled down. So it's a community, it's a small community. So depending on the it's a microgrid, if you consider that it's a microgrid. So the level of the solar installation, the area, it will ultimately decide that this is the area. Now you have identified some area where the solar installation, the rooftop solar installation, and so all are limited. Okay, so you have identified some area, but you don't have the data set corresponding to is as far as the study is considered. So to match that, you have a load data of somewhere else. So you have decreased down to this particular level. So this scaling is varying actually. It is not following certain rule. How much scale down you did?
Actually, we are following some domain knowledge is that the actual data set is in the range of megawatts.
So
Covers a very wide region. So residential sector assuming 25%. Sector-wise, if you see, then 25% we have assumed as residential sector. Then again, scaling down to a small city because Pennsylvania is a very huge state. And inside that,
yeah, so I have mentioned that it is PJM data set.
So
PJM data set.
Pennsylvania, Philadelphia city, we are again scaling it down. So just some domain knowledge.
It's for a microgrid basically. No, utility grid connected. Unless and until it is utility grid, there is no option of exchange of data. Yeah, one microgrid. So there are several research papers on this IBDR policy, but something new. Each and everyone is actually introduced something new.
So I have not taken appliance level.
Sir, as
Okay,
far as the
yeah.
consumers are concerned, we are considering the commercial consumers or domestic consumers?
Residential, mainly it is the residential consumers that we have considered here.
And sir, which side the probability of attack is more, consumer side or that utility side?
Mainly, I should say from a normal understanding from the consumer side. From the consumer side, because always they wish to increase the profit or something like that. The attacking the operating side is always pretty difficult. The operating side has certain other shells which cannot be allowed to attack so easily because it is in the operating side. Okay, but consumer side is easy to attack. So there is always chance of attacking on the consumer side more. Okay, so we are having a small tea break.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll take a 10-minute break, then we'll resume again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.